You know, everyone talks about Gettysburg being haunted. Battlefield ghosts, spectral soldiers still fighting. Yeah, I'd heard it all. Tourist trap stuff, right. But the photo I took near Devil's Den, the one I didn't even check until I got home. There's a figure standing by the rocks, half hidden in the mist. It's tall, too tall, wearing something that looks like a uniform but distorted. And it wasn't there when I clicked the shutter, I swear. The trip itself felt heavy. We arrived late afternoon, mist already rolling in thick across the fields, muffling sounds. It wasn't peaceful though, it felt watchful, like stepping into a place where the air itself remembers pain. My friend Mark was mostly interested in the history plaques, but I kept getting this prickling sensation on my neck, especially as dusk settled. We were walking along Seminary Ridge, trying to imagine the chaos, the noise, but the silence was louder. It pressed in. Mark wanted to check out Devil's Den before it got properly dark. Said it was the hotspot for ghost stories. The rocks there are jumbled, unnatural looking, like giant broken teeth sticking out of the earth. The fog was even thicker here, swirling around the boulders. I lagged behind, trying to get some atmospheric shots with my phone. That's when I took that asterisk picture. I didn't see anything through the lens, just the rocks and the fog. But the air, it dropped temperature instantly. Back home, things felt normal for maybe a day. Then I finally uploaded the photos. That's when I saw it. Zoomed in on the Devil's Den shot. The figure. It wasn't clear, more like a smudge shaped like a man, but wrong. The proportions felt off, limbs too long, posture stiff, unnatural. It looked like it was wearing dark wool, maybe a greatcoat, but torn, ragged. No face visible, just shadow under where a hat brim might be. I showed Mark. The first weird thing happened a few nights later. I was making coffee in the kitchen. My back was turned to the hallway that leads to the living room. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A flicker of darkness, tall and thin, just darting past the edge of the doorway. I spun around, heart pounding. Nothing, just the empty hallway, shadows pooling near the coat rack. I told myself it was lack of sleep, stress maybe. But the image from the photo flashed in my mind, that tall, distorted shape. Then came the whispers. Faint, like rustling leaves or wind sighing, but indoors where there was no wind, always just on the edge of hearing. Sometimes it sounded like fragments of words, indistinct, layered over each other. A man's voice, maybe multiple voices, rough and low. I'd pause the TV, strain to listen. Silence. As soon as I'd relax, start thinking I imagined it, it would start again. A dry, sibilant murmuring coming from nowhere or everywhere. It felt like the walls were breathing it. I started doing some research online, trying to find stories about that specific area near Devil's Den. Most were standard ghost fare, sightings of soldiers, sounds of battle. Nothing quite matched the figure in my photo, its height, its weird proportions. But then I found an obscure blog post mentioning older legends, pre-Civil War even, about something that haunted those hills. Something territorial and malevolent, drawn to places of great suffering. Things escalated. Objects started moving subtly at first. The remote control not where I left it. A kitchen knife shifted slightly on the magnetic rack. Small things you could easily dismiss. Until the framed photo of my parents fell off the wall. Hard, the glass shattered. It was securely hung, no drafts, no vibrations. It just fell. As I was cleaning up the glass, I felt that cold spot again, just like at Devil's Den. The air grew heavy, thick with that faint, metallic, wet earth smell. I started seeing it more often. Not just flickers in my peripheral vision, but actual shapes, in reflections mostly. I'd glance at the dark TV screen and for a split second see a tall silhouette standing behind me, or catch movement in the bathroom mirror when I knew I was alone. It was always indistinct, wrapped in shadow, but undeniably there. Always that same unsettling height, the vaguely wrong posture. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to go back. Maybe if I returned the energy, or whatever it was, it would stop. It sounds crazy, I know. Mark refused, said I was freaking myself out over a blurry photo and stress. So I drove back to Gettysburg alone. It was late autumn now, colder, the trees bare. The fog was waiting for me, rolling in just as I pulled up near Devil's Den, almost like in greeting. Stepping out of the car felt like plunging into ice water. Standing among those same boulders, the cold was bone deep. The fog swirled, creating shifting shapes in the near darkness. I held out the photo, almost speaking to the air, saying I didn't mean any disrespect, that I just wanted this to stop. Stupid, right? Talking to rocks and mist. Then I heard it. not whispering this time. A sound like dragging canvas, heavy boots on wet leaves coming from deeper within the rocks. It circled me. Then I saw it. Not a reflection, not a flicker. Standing maybe 20 feet away at the edge of my flashlight beam, half materialized from the fog. The tall figure, taller than seemed possible. It wore the ragged, dark coat, the vague suggestion of a uniform, but it wasn't solid. It shimmered, edges blurring into the fog like smoke. No face, just deeper shadow under the brim of a non-existent hat. It didn't move, just stood there, emanating cold and that awful smell. But the worst part, I didn't scream, I didn't run, I just stared back. And holding its gaze, or where its gaze should be, I understood. It wasn't angry, it wasn't malevolent, not exactly. It was desperate, trapped. That feeling I'd felt on the battlefield, the overwhelming sorrow, radiated from it in waves. It wasn't a soldier's ghost, not really. It felt older, like it was tangled up in the battle's memory, forced to wear its shape, replay its echoes. Under the weak flashlight beam, the photo seemed different. The figure behind the rocks was still there, distorted, shadowy. But looking closer, concentrating despite the shaking in my hands, I saw something else. Not on the figure itself, but near its feet. Something small, almost lost in the shadows and the grain of the photo. A glint of metal, or maybe letters carved into the rock face behind it, letters I hadn't noticed before. It was impossible to make out clearly. I never figured out what the carving or the glint was. The moment I tried to focus on it, truly see asterisk it, the figure just dissolved, vanished back into the fog like it was never there. The cold lifted slightly, the smell faded. The presence was gone. I practically ran back to my car, didn't look back. Since then, it's been quiet. No whispers, no shadows in reflections, nothing moved. But the photo, it's changed. I keep it locked away now, because the figure. They called it the questioning chair, but honestly, calling it a chair feels generous. Cold iron bites into you, even through thin clothes. You don't sit, you endure it. Every breath I take tastes like damp stone and mildew, the kind that clings to forgotten places. Flickering torchlight throws shadows that writhe like tortured souls on the walls. How long have I been down here? Days, weeks. Time melts in this darkness. The heavy oak door creaked open, a groan that scraped along my nerves. He entered like a wraith, Brother Thomas. Black robes swallowing the meager light, his face gaunt, shadowed beneath the hood. He didn't look at me, not directly. He moved with this unnerving calm, placing a small, leather-bound book and a strange metal implement, something with sharp-looking gears, on a rough wooden table near the wall. He still hadn't said a word. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Matteo, son of Luca, his voice finally broke the silence. It wasn't loud, but it echoed, dry and raspy, like stones grinding together. We know what you saw by the old quarry. My blood ran cold. The quarry, I stammered, trying to form words. Brother, I'm a carpenter. I work with wood. I haven't been near the quarry in months, maybe years. What is this about? He turned his head slowly, those eyes hidden in shadow finally fixing on me. The quarry, he repeated, his voice insistent, weaving into the silence. Tell me about the alignment, the stars. When they bled, bleeding stars, alignment. My mind scrambled, searching for any meaning, any memory that fit. Brother, I swear I don't understand. Stars don't bleed. I'm a simple man. I mend chairs. I build chests. I know wood grain, not constellations. He leaned forward slightly, the movement almost imperceptible, but the intensity ratcheted up. Were you alone? He picked up the book. It wasn't the Bible, I realized with a jolt. The leather was too dark, almost black, and unmarked by any cross or familiar symbol. He opened it carefully, pages rustling like dry leaves. He didn't read from it, not yet. He just looked at the script inside, strange, angular symbols I'd never seen before. They seemed to twist on the page, even in the unsteady light. The pattern, he murmured, tracing a symbol with a long finger. It manifests. My mind flashed back, unbidden, not to the quarry, but to a night weeks ago, a terrible nightmare. I hadn't thought of it since, pushed it down. A dream of impossible shapes twisting in the sky, lines bending where they shouldn't, colors I couldn't name pulsing behind my eyelids. And a sound, a low, grating hum that vibrated in my bones. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, the echo of that sound lingering. Was that what he meant? How could he possibly know about a dream? He set the book down and picked up the metal device. My eyes were fixed on it now. Gears meshed silently as he made a small adjustment with his thumb. It looked archaic, yet chillingly precise. "Sometimes," he said, his voice softening, becoming almost understanding, "the mind builds walls to protect itself from truths too terrible to comprehend. It buries the memory, locks it away, but the knowledge festers, it corrupts." He took a step towards me. He didn't use the tool, not yet. Instead, he began to ask stranger questions, not just about dreams, but about moments I'd barely noticed or long forgotten. Did I ever feel watch when walking the village lanes at dusk? Had I noticed the peculiar silence of the birds on the morning of the summer solstice? Did I ever find patterns in the wood grain that seemed unnatural, unsettling? Questions that seeded doubt, making me re-examine mundane memories through a lens of nascent dread. "The resonance," he murmured again, pacing slowly now, back and forth in the confined space like a caged predator. "It leaves traces, echoes in the fabric of reality, imprinted on susceptible minds." He stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I could smell the mustiness of his robe, the faint scent of old parchment. "Think, Matteo. The quarry is merely where the veil thinned, but the influence spreads. It touches objects, places, people." He gestured vaguely around the cell. "Who else knows?" His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "Who else in the village feels it? Who shares your affliction?" He was leaning in again, his breath cool against my cheek. "Think, Matteo, who looks at the sky too long, who mutters words under their breath when they think no one is listening, who avoids the church bell." I shook my head frantically. "No one. We are simple folk, brother, God-fearing people." He finally stepped back towards the table, giving me a moment's respite from his suffocating presence. He picked up the strange book again, flipping through its pages. This time, he stopped at a page dominated by a single, complex diagram. It looked like a map of stars, but twisted, warped, overlapping in ways that made my head hurt to look at. Centered in the diagram was a shape, a jagged, asymmetrical symbol that felt sickeningly familiar. I think so," I choked out, the admission tearing from me. "Something like that. In the dream, the light bent around it. Relief, cold and unsettling, seemed to wash over Brother Thomas's posture. He closed the book with a soft thud. "Good, Matteo, good. Admission is the first step towards purification." He set the book down, and his hand went back to the metal tool. "The dream was the initial contact. The resonance found purchase. Now, we must understand the extent of the ingress." He pressed the cold points of the device against my temple. It didn't break the skin, not yet, but the pressure was insistent, terrifying. A faint whirring sound started, gears turning slowly within the mechanism. "Focus, Matteo." His voice was low, intense, right beside my ear. "Focus on the dream. The quarry, the non-angle. Let the memory surface. Don't fight it. Show me what you saw. Show asterisk us asterisk. Us. Who else was he talking about?" Images flooded my mind, sharp and unwanted. The quarry at night, but wrong. The stars were bleeding, dripping colors that stained the impossible sky. The air hummed with that low, grating frequency. And I saw movement, not human. Angles shifting, stone rearranging itself into patterns that hurt to look at. There was a sound, too, beneath the hum, faint chanting, but not Latin, not any language I knew. It felt ancient, alien. Was this my memory? Then clarity, sharp, cold, and utterly horrifying. It wasn't my asterisk memory he was accessing. He wasn't trying to find the taint in me, the questions, the book, the device. It was all a focusing ritual. He wasn't interrogating a witness. He was using me as an antenna, a conduit. The dream wasn't the cause. It was the asterisk effect of asterisk his studies, asterisk his dabbling leaking out, touching susceptible minds like mine. You think you know fear. Fear isn't the cough that rattles your neighbor's shutters all night. It's not the red crosses hastily painted on doors. Fear has a shape. It wears a long black coat and a mask like a monstrous bird. They said he came to heal us when the Black Death arrived in our town, crawling from the docks like a starving beast. But I saw him first, not arriving with the dawn, but waiting in the dusk, already here, like he asterisk knew it was coming. The town council, desperate men clutching their purses and their fading hopes, practically fell over themselves to welcome him. Dr. Viridian, he called himself, had papers, claimed vast experience from cities already ravaged. He spoke with an odd, clipped accent none of us could place. his voice muffled and distorted by the mask. He demanded space, supplies, and crucially, non-interference. And he needed an assistant. Someone young, strong, preferably an orphan with few ties. The infirmary, he claimed, was less a hospital, more a forgotten tomb. Thick layers of grime coated everything, the air heavy with the ghosts of 100 prior ailments. My first task wasn't tending the sick, but cleaning. Endless scrubbing with harsh lye soap and vinegar, hauling out rotted bedding, boarding up broken windows against the encroaching despair outside. Dr. Viridian oversaw it all, never removing his mask or coat, even in the stifling air inside. Patients started arriving within days. Wheezing, trembling figures carried in on rough blankets, their skin already showing the telltale darkening marks, the dreaded buboes swelling beneath their arms and in their groins. Their eyes held a terror that mirrored the growing panic in the town square. Dr. Viridian's methods were peculiar. He didn't rely solely on the usual bloodletting or lancing of boils, though he did those too, with a detached, almost artistic precision. The whispers started soon after. People weren't getting better. Not really. Oh, perhaps the initial fever might break, or a swelling might recede after one of Viridian's treatments. But then, something else would set in. A different kind of delirium, marked by vivid hallucinations. Patients would claw at unseen things in the air, whisper secrets to the walls, their eyes wide with a unique, glassy terror I hadn't seen with the regular plague victims. And the mortality rate, it didn't seem to drop. One night, struggling with a particularly heavy load wrapped in canvas, I stumbled. The covering slipped. I only saw it for a second before the doctor roughly pulled the canvas back, hissing at me under his breath. But I saw enough. The man inside wasn't just dead from the plague. His skin, it wasn't just blackened. It was patterned. Like intricate, dark veins had spread beneath the surface, forming swirling, unnatural designs. And his eyes. I started watching him more closely after that. His private laboratory, a small back room he always kept locked, became an object of intense curiosity and fear for me. Strange smells seeped from under the door, not just chemicals, but something organic, faintly sweet and raw, like decaying meat left in the sun. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear odd sounds from within, not screams, but wet, rhythmic noises, slithering maybe, or thick liquids being stirred or poured, and chanting. One afternoon, while the doctor was briefly called away to consult on a wealthy merchant, a consultation I noted the merchant did not survive long after, my curiosity became unbearable. The lab door, it wasn't fully latched. He must have been distracted. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to leave this place forever. But I had to know. What was he doing? Lab was cluttered but meticulously organized. Glass vials filled with murky liquids lined shelves, alongside preserved organs floating in jars, some recognizably animal, others disturbingly unidentifiable. Strange metal instruments, more intricate and cruel-looking than any surgical tools I'd ever seen, lay gleaming under the weak light filtering through a grime-caked window. But the centerpiece, on a large wooden table, was a collection of diagrams. Anatomical sketches, but wrong, twisted. My eyes scanned the ledger, recognizing names, recalling faces contorted in unnatural agony. Then I saw it. Near the beginning of the list, dated shortly after the doctor's arrival, before the infirmary was even officially open. My name, Thomas. And beside it, not the usual cluster of symbols denoting observation or treatment, but a single, unique mark. A circle with a thorny vine coiled around it, almost like a crown. And it clawed its way up my throat. I stumbled back from the table, knocking over a small tray of instruments with a clatter that echoed like thunder in the silence. Footsteps, heavy and measured, sounded from the hallway. He was back. I didn't think, I just reacted. I scrambled towards a shadowed corner, behind a stack of crates filled with pungent, dried herbs, pulling myself into the cramped space just as the door swung fully open. Dr. Viridian entered, his masked head slowly scanning the room. He didn't search. He didn't call out. He simply straightened up and walked slowly towards the table with the ledger and diagrams. He looked down at them for a long moment, his masked face impossible to read. Then he reached out, not touching the ledger, but hovering his gloved hand just above my name. Above subject 0. He stayed like that for what felt like an eternity, completely still. I didn't sleep that night or the night after. The bloom is almost ready. The words echoed in my mind, intertwining with the image of those grotesque diagrams, the vine-like growths. I started feeling different, not sick like the others, not yet. But there was a strange tingling under my skin, especially on the arm where that rash had been. And my dreams, they were filled with twisting black vines, pulsating in rhythm with my own heartbeat, growing in the darkness behind my eyes. 2 days later it began, not with a cough or a fever, but with a cough asterisk from someone else directed at asterisk me. Old man Hemlock, the baker, stumbled past me in the street, hacking violently. A spray of saliva hit my face before I could react. Normally, I'd be terrified of infection, but this time, something else happened. I felt a cold surge within me, a darkness unfurling. I ran from the infirmary, from the town, from the unreadable masked face of Dr. Viridian. But how do you run from something that's inside you? I live in the woods now, like an animal. The patterns under my skin are darker, more intricate. Sometimes when I pass near settlements where my desperation for food outweighs my fear, people get sick. Not the old plague, his asterisk plague, the one that blooms from me. I see the red crosses appear days later, hear the terrified whispers. Okay, so you know those stories about places you shouldn't go. Forbidden spots, the Roman catacombs. They warn you, stick to the tour, don't wander off. It's easy to get lost down there, they say. But my friend Marco, he always thought rules were suggestions, just optional guidelines for boring people. That's how we ended up deep asterisk below Rome, flashlights cutting through centuries of dust, squeezing past bones older than Christianity itself. Marco was making progress, flakes of mortar and stone raining down silently onto the dusty floor. I kept glancing back down the narrow passage we came from, half expecting a security guard, half expecting something else. The silence was the worst part. Up top, Rome buzzes constantly. Down here, nothing. Just the rasp of Marco's rock against stone and our own ragged breathing, echoing slightly too much. "Leo, man, almost there," he muttered, his voice muffled, tight with excitement. A final crack echoed unnaturally loud in the confined space, and a section of the niche seal, about the size of a dinner plate, crumbled inwards. Marco scrambled back, kicking up dust. We both held our flashlights on the opening. Inside, it wasn't like the other niches filled with skeletal remains. This one was small, maybe just for one person, and remarkably preserved. There was dust, sure, but also remnants of what looked like fabric, dark and rotten. Marco's fingers closed around the object. As he pulled his hand back out into the light, a gust of freezing air rushed from the niche, extinguishing both our flashlights simultaneously. Plunged into absolute, deafening darkness miles underground, I gasped, fumbling frantically with my light, clicking the switch uselessly. Marco, you okay?" My voice cracked, sounding small and thin. Silence. Then a soft, metallic clink as something hit the stone floor near him. "Marco." "Okay, creepy souvenir acquired, let's go," I said, trying to sound normal, trying to ignore the ice crawling up my spine. "Marco, let's get out of here." He didn't react, just kept staring at the ring, turning it slowly in his fingers. His lips were moving slightly, but no sound came out. My flashlight beam caught the symbols again. They weren't just geometric, they looked organic, like coiled serpents or thorny vines. "Marco," I grabbed his arm. "Right, that's it, we're leaving." I practically dragged Marco away from the niche, pulling him back down the passage we came from. He stumbled along, strangely passive, still clutching that cursed ring. Our flashlights seemed dimmer now, the beams barely penetrating the oppressive darkness ahead. Every few steps, I'd hear it again, that dry, shuffling rustle, sometimes seeming to come from behind us, sometimes from the side passages that branched off into nothingness. Were there rats? Could rats make that sound? We came to a junction, 3 tunnels branching off into identical blackness. I had no idea which way we'd come. Panic tightened its grip. "Which way, Marco? Do you remember?" He didn't answer, just stopped humming and tilted his head again, listening. "They are showing the way," he whispered, his voice even drier now, cracking. He pointed down the left-hand tunnel. "There." I shone my light down it. It looked exactly the same as the others, dark, dusty, endless. "How do you know?" The tunnel Marco led us down seemed different. Narrower, the ceiling lower, forcing us to stoop. The air grew thick, heavy, making it hard to breathe. That smell, rust and rot, was overwhelming now. And the walls, They weren't lined with neat burial niches anymore. They were covered in carvings. Crude, unsettling symbols, mirroring the ones on Marco's ring, scratched deep into the stone. Some looked like intertwined snakes, others like figures twisted in agony, faces contorted in silent screams. Panic surged, overriding everything else. I shoved past Marco, ignoring his cold, unresisting form, and scrambled deeper into the tunnel. I didn't care where it led, only that it was away from him, away from that sound. "Leo," his voice echoed behind me, distorted, layered, like several voices speaking at once. "Noli me relinqua, do not leave me." But it wasn't a plea, it was a command, cold and filled with ancient authority. I risked a glance back. I stumbled into the small chamber, flashlight beam bouncing wildly off the carved walls. The air was thick as sludge, vibrating with a low hum that resonated in my bones. Marco stepped into the chamber behind me, moving with a fluid, unnatural grace that wasn't his. The rustling sound stopped. He raised the hand wearing the ring. "Tempus est," he rasped, the voice now a horrifying chorus of whispers and dry clicks. "It is time." I didn't think, I just reacted. I spun around, desperate, searching for any other way out. There, on the far side of the chamber, almost hidden behind the crude altar-like pile of bones, another low opening, barely visible in the flickering light. It looked impossibly narrow, maybe a ventilation shaft, maybe just another dead end. Didn't matter. I scrambled towards it, tripping over bones, my hands scraping against the rough stone. I pushed onwards through the suffocating blackness, the passage twisting, turning, scraping against me. Felt like being buried alive. My flashlight was gone, dropped back in the chamber. I moved by feel alone, the rough stone tearing at my clothes and skin. Behind me, the rustling persisted, sometimes fading, sometimes seeming unnervingly close. Was it following me? Could it fit through here? Panic kept me moving, crawling on hands and knees over unseen debris. How long did I crawl? Minutes? Hours? With strength I didn't know I possessed, I heaved at the grating. Rusted hinges screamed, but it gave way, falling outwards onto damp soil and dead leaves. I scrambled out, gasping, collapsing onto cool grass. Above me, stars. Actual stars, slightly hazy through the light pollution of Rome, but undeniably real. I was out. I was on the surface. I seemed to be in some overgrown, neglected patch of ground, maybe an abandoned cemetery section bordering the catacomb entrances. I eventually stumbled back to my small rental apartment near Termini Station, avoiding people, moving like a ghost. Showered for an hour, scrubbing away the grime and the lingering scent of decay, but I couldn't wash away the cold that had settled deep in my bones. Didn't sleep, obviously. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marco's face, those empty eyes, the writhing symbols, the shadow taking shape. Heard the whispers, the rustling. Tried calling Marco's phone the next day, just went straight to voicemail. It's been a few weeks now. I flew home, left Rome far behind, but the feeling, it hasn't faded. If anything, it's worse. I still jump at shadows, still hear faint rustling sounds when it's quiet, especially at night. Sometimes I catch a whiff of that smell, damp earth, rust, and rotting flowers, even though it's impossible. Last night was the worst, though. I was washing my face, getting ready for bed, staring into the bathroom mirror, tired, haggard.